Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound. Early 2025 when you are watching this, late 2024 when we are recording this. But there is a very important thing that we have to talk about, and that is the new record by this young man over here. I'm very, very happy to have Evan Patterson, aka Jaye Jayle, again here on the show. So, Evan, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's always my pleasure. And the record that you are having released soon is called After Altar. It's going to be out on Pelagic Records and, if I read correctly, also on your own label, Future Heart Works, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I just for some reason decided I need to start my own label.
And are you going to split distribution or like how's it going to work?
With this release, it's just kind of my imprint is on the record and the CD, and actually not even the CD, it's just the record, just the vinyl, and Pelagic's handling everything else. But with the Future Heartwork starting and being very small, I don't really have distribution yet. I don't have much beyond just order and shipping records out myself, which I'm finding out is a lot of work. I've done a book release of my illustrations is the first release, and the second one was a solo Jaye Jayle record called A Bluebird Cage. And then After Altar is the official third release, but I've also 2 weeks ago released an album for a friend here in Louisville. Her name's Lacey Guthrie, and she released a record called Flower Eating Monster that came out 2 weeks ago, and that's my first record for an artist that I've ever released that I wasn't involved with, and I don't play any music on the record or anything, so it was really exciting to be sharing and helping someone out, help their dreams come true, to release a vinyl of their album.
Yeah, as you indirectly already answered our icebreaker this way, just to make it sure, the name of the artist is Guthrie, like Woody Guthrie?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
They might be related somewhere down the line. I haven't really asked, but it's probably worth asking.
Would be. So, yeah, and before anybody asks, the shirt that I'm plugging today comes from the heart and is for the heart. Amen Ra.
Oh yeah.
In the dark months of the year, always one of my go-to bands. Evan, we are catching you at home, if I remember correctly, but since our last interview was recorded or released roughly like 18 months ago, you and I just in our little pre-chat I found out that a lot of things have changed. What has changed in your home in those last 18 months?
Actually, I think the last time we talked, we were at my home. It's in the city, and now we're at my partner's home. She's a flower farmer, and she lives in a cabin, and I'm now in the cabin, which has a really bad phone signal and very little Wi-Fi. So if things get choppy, that's the reason why I'm out in the country, about half an hour from Louisville. And we have a 10-month-old baby boy, which is incredible. Such a life-changing, it's really difficult to explain to anyone that does not have a child.
That's true. That's true. So back then, did you already know that your partner was pregnant?
I don't think I did then. I think I found out July of last year was when we found out. So, yeah.
However, of course, this baby boy changes a lot of perspectives. And when listening to your new record, there are also some perspectives that I would say have changed. I mean, like, it's always hard to tell those who need genres what kind of genre Jaye Jayle is. I think the closest one that I'll ever come is like post-punk or gothic folk, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I actually came up with the genre blues or goth blues is what I've been telling civilians. Like, if we're on tour and we stop at a gas station or a restaurant and someone asks, are you all, the saying is, are you all in a band or something? That's what everybody always says. And I've decided to start telling people that we are goth blues, and they just say, "Oh, okay." So,
Which might be maybe the best pinpointing, but I think it's very, very hard. It's also pretty hard, if I understood it correctly. This new record, After Altar, is a collection of songs that have been long in the making. Is that correct? I've
mm,
heard somewhere that one of the songs was even written before you released your first album.
this is true. There's four brand new songs that were recorded with the "Don't Let Your Love Life Get You Down" album,
Mm-hmm.
and those four songs were heavier. They were kind of they didn't really fit with the album, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, we probably didn't have time to put them on the album. So we held on to them, not knowing what we wanted to do. And then I self-released a few songs over the past few, probably honestly, the past 4 or 5 years, and it just kind of made sense to put these songs that I'd released digitally with these new songs.
Yeah.
And one of the songs, Bloody Me, which there are two versions of that song on the album. There's a version that is solo, that's just me and guitar. And it's probably the most stripped down Jaye Jayle song ever released, really.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like an old Jimmy Rogers song more than it sounds anything like what I've done. And then there's also a full band version of the song. And it's nice to be able to put, that's, I think every song we've ever made now is on a physical format, which feels really fantastic.
This approach also somewhat reminded me of the early Jaye Jayle uh, discography, of the early way that you did it. You very often at the beginning put out, I think, 3 or 4 singles and then later collected them on a record.
Correct.
Is that
Yeah.
something where you said like, okay, let's close full circle now. Let's, as you said, put everything onto a physical release once in a while?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a thing of a song never feels like it truly is released. Like it's like the full circle of completing a song and until you have a physical format.
That's
The digital release of a song doesn't, it's not a very rewarding payoff. The success of I just made this song and then okay, I'm gonna put it out in the world and just let people stream it.
yeah.
It's fine, but it doesn't just I feel like for myself and other artists that I've talked with, it's not the it doesn't feel like you're getting a I like to think of records as getting a trophy or an award for all of your work.
Yeah.
And when you get the physical record, it's like, I have something to physically show for all of my work.
Yeah, it's nothing you can put onto your mantelpiece, of course not.
Exactly.
You've just mentioned, people streaming, and that is also something that I would like to ask. Your brother is very, very clearly, in a way, in his way of opposing streaming. Your own stuff is still on streaming services. Should we see this as a future constant thing that we can also stream your songs, or will you go the full way like Ryan and say like, okay, if you want my music, here is a physical release?
I would prefer to only release music on a physical format or a format that's not supporting these, you know, rich, corporate bricks that own all these companies. And even the best ones that we know of, they're all just businesses now, not ran by people who are passionate about music. I mean, none of them, like they've all been sold. They've all been traded out to people that are just, running a business. And that's not really what got me into playing music and got me to be into, making art. It's kind of the outlet and the experimenting and the joy of creating the art and celebrating the art. And of course, making a living from being a musician or an artist is an thing for many of my friends that do it and make a full-time living, but I still do not. And I don't really know if I ever did make a full-time living for music. I don't know if I would actually want the pressure of solely depending on music as my only source of income, or it's to me, it's really about the craft and being able to experiment and just continue to create without any kind of preconceived, as you can tell, because I don't like to make the same record twice. It's an exciting thing to me to just be able to experiment and make new art.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, if you rely on music as your sole source of income, then there is always that little danger of compromising your art, right?
Sorry, I froze up for a second.
No problem. So if you depend on music as your sole source of income, there might be that danger of compromising your art, right?
Correct. Yeah, I mean that's the and I've kind of at times have felt a little of that, just a little pressure of like, well, I think it was with Young Widows in particular where I made the Old Wounds album, and the next album was In and Out of Ethan Lightness, and a lot of people were just like, oh, well, this is like a very big departure from those records, and people would talk to me about it at shows, and it made me feel a little more of a kind of a hermit. Like I kind of was just like, well, now I don't want anyone's opinions or anyone's views. I don't need to know what people think about my music anymore. And then from there, that was not too long before starting Jaye Jayle, kind of just going never made before.
It also fits very well when you say like you don't want to do the same record twice, because looking at this collection of songs, I had a feeling, especially with the first 2, 3, 4 songs, as if they were sound-wise a little more industrial, a little bit more electronic. Is that one of the reasons why you hadn't put them on, for example, Don't Let Your Love Life Get You Down?
Yeah, I mean, there was a discussion of putting a few of them on there, and with the album flow and the general dreaminess and beauty of that record, I didn't want to interrupt that. It would have been just those songs would have stuck out a lot. And sometimes that's a great thing in an album, but for me, most of my favorite albums just set a mood and kind of stay in this mood. And if you want to put on the record and this one song jumps out as heavy and noisier and more industrial, more disruptive in a way, I sometimes find myself being like, well, that's my favorite song on the album. And that's a thing that I was kind of thinking, like, I don't want this to have a song that is so stand out that it would become take away from the other songs.
I totally get that. But however, I should also say that there is a little bit of similarity between a few of those songs on the new record and one of your earlier records, Prison, from 2020, I think. Because that was also largely electronic and less guitar driven. Right. Do some of these songs stem from that period?
Yeah, the song Small Dark Voices, it's the first song on the side B of the record, and that song was actually made at the same exact time period as Prison, but I could never find an ending to the song. And if you listen to the song, you'll now find that the ending goes on for a very, very long time. It's a long piece, and that was kind of my way to resolve the issue of not figuring out how to end the song. I was like, let's just make it go for 5 minutes, make it be a whole nother, just almost like 2 songs in one. It goes from this really quiet mood into this kind of full blown like hip hop beat rock song at the end. And that song, Ben Chisholm who worked on Prison with me. That record was just the two of us working on that. And he also mixed and produced Don't Let Your Love Life Get You Down and the 4 new songs on After Altar. So this Small Dark Forces is the other song that complete Prison of me writing songs on my phone while on tour.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, you also say that on Bandcamp about that record. Like all of this was done on an iPhone.
Yeah. All on the iPhone in the van.
Yeah. When talking about songs where you, I don't want to say drag out the ending, but where you really prolong the songs, where you elongate them, there is one standout track because it's a track that everybody knows and you've recorded a cover of it, and it's Help by the Beatles. You've already released that one digitally, I think 2 years ago or last year, I don't know for sure. It's a very, very goth, doomy version of a track. It once again shows how different songs can be, done by different interpreters. However, there is also one line which all of a sudden, for me, changed the whole perspective of the track and also a little bit my perspective on you, because I'm very sure if you release something like that in that particular version, it must have a personal meaning. And that line in the track is, we all know that I'm not so self-assured. But you, of course, don't sing that with the youthful fountain of joy that the Liverpool Fab Four did. In yours, it's a very, it's a line which is full of self-doubt. Is that something that carried you through while you were doing some of these tracks? I mean, like, some of them are pretty old.
No, it's the line really. I mean, hearing that song, I think the time period when I was making, I just that was a really quick, fun project to make just that song on its own. It was, I think I just heard the song in the car and had heard, millions. I feel like I've heard that song a million times.
Yeah, we've all done, right? It's everywhere.
I'm not exaggerating. Yeah. Heard it, I think, multiple times in a day. And I just thought, what could I do to make this kind of match the lyrics more rather than, and I didn't even realize this after making the song is it's supposedly about John Lennon's first acid trip.
Okay.
So the song is about him taking acid for the first time and kind of tripping out and needing help, and kind of just being probably so high he felt like he was losing control and not knowing what's going on. Out of context, it's the lyrics to the song come off very kind of desperate and lonely, and it's exciting to be able to take something that has music that is very joyful and then put your own score to the lyrics and completely control the mood of the song.
Go on, please.
And the I'm not so self-assured thing, that's the line. It's, to me, it's just kind of it's such a great line to hear in a song. I don't even feel like I hear lines like that in songs, and that's what kind of makes the whole piece be so good. It'd be so captivating.
But you would also agree that that's one of the central lines in the whole song, right?
It is, yes, yes.
By the way, when you just mentioned joyful, I did my homework because I remember last time in our quickfire round, I gave you the alternatives of Joy House and Joy Division and Bauhaus. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that you think you've heard that Curtis's last record before he died was Iggy Pop's The Idiot.
Yes.
I did a little research on it and I found this text by I forgot who it wrote, but it really actually seems as if that was the last record that had been played in Curtis's home. And also, interestingly, what I then found out that it's based on a book from one of those Russian writers of the 19th century, where the protagonist at one point takes his own life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I have not read The Idiot, the book, but I did read that that's what the record
yeah,
was named after. So,
yeah. And
yeah,
it's very very interesting to hear that Curtis listened to that as the last piece of music that he ever listened to.
it really
Um,
is. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about the sound of Joy Division and the sound of Iggy Pop, the Idiot, also
yeah,
just as an influence and as a sometimes I think even about the way of the way he danced on stage and how it looks like the cover of The Idiot.
yeah.
How he has his hands straight, It seemed there was like a bit of Iggy Pop worshiping going on there.
Yeah, and it's also the dichotomy between the music, which again, just like with Help, at first glance, the music seems energetic and seems uplifting in a way. And if you then listen to the lyrics, it's a totally different thing. And that is something that I always liked about Joy Division, even though they will never be my favorite post-punk band. But that dichotomy is
Yeah.
definitely something very interesting. Speaking about lyrics, that is also something that one hears on Jaye Jayle records. Lyrics are important. Whether it's only a line in a Beatles song or stuff that one hears in your lyrics, it's very, very important. And for example, in one of the, for me, important tracks on After Altar, in A Blackout, you say, "I'm glad you're so sad." And then I found out that you wrote that song, or that the song is in some way inspired by your journey across the USA. Um, how no, let's think about it. How Nostradamus-like is that song when we think about the fact that the next 4 years we will have again somebody ruining the country?
I mean, unfortunately, people like us, we have little control over who is going to be our president or who
True.
is going to represent our country, which I could give a fucking less of a care what country I'm from. I don't have any kind of pride in my state or my city or country. That's not how I think or live or associate myself with anyone. So, um, you know, the effects of it are, to me, it's, disabling almost.
Would you
It's like
agree that the
a
next
no
four
brainer.
years the states will be even blacker, even more blackout?
Oh, absolutely. It's just kind of it's nonsensical, and it's just I try not to really talk about it much because of our lack of control and how little we can do on the bigger scale of things. Mostly what we can do is function progressively and caringly and lovingly in our small community, in our music community, and in our friend circles and our things that we have control over. This whole fucking crumbling.
That
I
then,
can't. Yeah,
this
it's. I don't.
that then is
I
probably
just.
also one
It's
of the
even.
ideas behind Future Heartworks, right? Giving back to your community.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that was a big part of it was, starting to change subjects because I really hate talking about the government. So,
Which is totally fine.
um, to do the record label and imprint, it's with Future Heartworks. It's kind of happened because a friend was talking to me about how frustrated they were that they couldn't find, like, a friend that I haven't released a record for or haven't to. But she said, no one's responding to me, and her music's incredible. It's just such beautiful music, and no one's responding, and this happened and this happened and nothing's happening. I don't know. It's just, Evan, you should just start a record label. And I was just like, I should? It's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And, and then talking to some friends, and I'm just like, with my very little to moderate success, which is, greater than some of my friends who are even struggling more as musicians and artists. And I feel like it's an exciting thing for me to be able to use these vehicles that I don't even like Instagram, be able to use this vehicle that to help other people that are similar to me and in my friend circle and in my part of my community. And I hope that people recognize what I'm doing, not as a venture to be a businessman or to be some kind of person that's trying to make money off of these artists. It's 100% to help these friends out and to help these people out. And it's kind of giving me this whole new fuel, and I'm associating it a lot with having my son and becoming a father.
You just said that that is one of the key factors, like giving back something and also supporting people with a similar view to yours. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about that, there are few tracks on the record where we could talk about important opinions and important attitudes. One of them is father figure, which of course works in two ways: in a anti-religious way, or also in the idea of, when you and I grew up, we had certain people that we looked up to, and that is something that I wish for everybody, to have some kind of role model, somebody to look up to. But at some point, these people will also vanquish. Is that something that you were aware of,
Yeah.
that the song works in two ways?
Yes. It was very much written to be looking at just the father as a role model as well as a father as, the Christian, the Holy Father.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised Christian and Methodist, and also I went through a lot of my childhood, as we all do. Once you realize that your parents are just normal people, and that that everyone can make mistakes. Your parents are just like us, and that once you kind of figure that out, that the whole kind of world opens up, and a lot of I would say, like, insecurities and anxiety and a lot of fears and just being alive, once you kind of lose that role model aspect in life and kind of take your own initiative to do things, that's when things open up. And I think you kind of get to see a whole new world through that. And with the lyrics in the song, it isn't just an anti-religious song as much as it is about the things I think that are funny about religion and about, the fear of evil. It's like the devil is coming, or you're going to hell and going to heaven, and all these so far-fetched, bizarre concepts that people just use in the Christian religion to, I guess, just for security, for purposes that I don't really understand, because it's just kind of the thing of like, just isn't just having morals enough and being a good person enough. Instead, it's just the finding more and more ways to feel guilty and scared and not stray away from the church, which is also just a corporation in itself. And there's a lot of things with Christianity that I think are really wonderful, of course, but there's equally as many things that I think are completely awful and backwards and actually terrifying, actually more evil than they are good. So that's what the song is about. Multiple meanings. Yeah.
And of course, nowadays it works for you on a third level, because you have to find out which kind of father figure you will be.
Yes. Yeah. And the song is Father Fiction. Is what the name of the song.
Oh yeah, Father Fiction. Sorry, not Father Figure. But it's very interesting to look at also how your own life can change the perspective on that thing. Another track that speaks very clearly to me, and also from an historical personal perspective. I don't know how it is about you, but when I grew up in the 80s, we always had a feeling as if the future was wide open, to quote Petty. It was like, future is going to be good. And then you have a track which I think says a lot about our current state of affairs, and that is Fear is Here. Do you also have that feeling as if fear has been gripping the world instead of optimism?
Yeah, I do think there's just, I think everyone is kind of scared of everything at certain points in time, and hyper aware, whether it be like because we have these devices in the palm of our hand now, we can research everything, and the first results are the scariest results, and or just driving down the street and being in fear of someone, road rage or plane crashes, or if the dishes are clean and have it's just things of like filth and all these things. It's we can it's a state of that I think that most people in America are definitely in. Again, and it kind of goes into this Christian mindset and attitude, and a lot of fear tactics for just being scared of other people, and as much as I am, and I can also say the same thing about myself. It's like I have a bit of a fear of associating with people that are outside of my progressive culture, and having to be put in situations where I'm just surrounded by people that have drastically different views and ideas, and while I'm not scared of them, I just can choose to not associate with them. And I don't know what if it's always been this kind of living in fear situation for humanity. I don't know if this has always been a modern idea. I don't know if it's coming from like the atomic family concept of I don't know if like pre-war, if people were as scared. I don't, I have no idea, but at this point, it just seems like between our health and violence and our, mental state and political state, it seems like there's too much fear in the world. the song is kind of making a bit of a tongue-in-cheek of specific things, like, you know, seeing fear in the dog's face and seeing fear in the plane aisle, and, you know, and seeing fear riding in the car. And I actually do have a lot of anxiety in a vehicle. Like, I have, if I'm riding in the passenger seat, that's the most anxious that I am ever in my entire life. For some, I have like I'm like always putting on the brakes and like bracing myself when people brake.
Sound a
I
little
can't.
bit like my
I
wife.
try to control it. It's. I'm fine in the backseat, but if I'm in the shotgun, it's. I'm actually terrified most of the time.
Something that plays into that I might ask
Well,
is,
now I
you
can't
know,
hear you for some
you've
reason.
been. Do you hear me?
There we go. Now I got you.
Okay. Something that goes into that is like you've been on a European tour recently for like I think 10 or 11 dates all across our little continent, also including the UK. How do you go about when you are on tour? Do you also try to stick in your little group where you know everybody, or do you try to get to know other people?
I mean, if there was more time to explore and do things, but it's outside of the venue and the other bands you're touring with, or the promoters or the venue staff, there's not a lot of conversating, you know. So I mean, it's a pretty insular experience to be on tour. You know, if the crew that you're with, the crew of bands that you're playing the shows with, and maybe the people at the venue, sometimes you barely talk to the people at the venues. But that's, you know, touring. It can really be a make it or break it deals if just the other bands aren't good people to tour with. You know, if one person is stressed out in a band and you're on tour with them every day, they can really affect the whole vibe of everyone's show and everyone's experience on the tour. So it's really pleasant to be traveling. You know, the Jaye Jayle band are my best friends. Those guys are who I hang out with here, even if we're not playing music, and to be able to travel with them is this last trip was like incredible. It was just such a pleasant trip all around and great shows, and yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to do the band with them and have them with me.
Are you already making tour plans for 2025?
Not with Jaye Jayle right now. I have a Young Widows album coming out in 2025, and we're announcing the first single very soon. And I'm kind of I'm trying not to tour too much with being a new father.
Of course.
And I have a few weeks planned and kind of spacing it out and giving myself time to be home and be a good dad and watch my kid grow and also be able to get out and play shows and, you know, get fuel. And hopefully, there's talks of things with Jaye Jayle, but nothing right now. I'm kind of just, I've been doing Jaye Jayle mostly for 10 years, and Young Widows has, I think, only toured once or twice in the past 8 years, 8 or 9, 8 years. So it'll be nice to kind of shift gears a little bit and focus my attention on my longtime band. A bit of a head change for me, but it's nice, you know. Performing songs that I made over 20 years ago, I'm a very different person now. And
are there also songs where you say I would not play that anymore, or I would do it very differently?
I felt like that at one point with Young Widows. Like, I just don't want to play these songs. But now I feel like I have more of a grip on. I think my mental and emotional state is more sturdier now than it ever has been, and I can play the songs without directly associating myself to particular moments when I was making these songs. which is nice, which I
I can
would
imagine.
prefer. Yes,
One track on the new record, on After Altar, you've already mentioned it, Bloody Me. We have two versions of it. One, if I remember correctly, being released, or not released, recorded at Third Man Records in Nashville. And
correct.
the
Yeah,
other is the, let's say, band version. Um, so I figure the acoustic version is the original one, right?
yes. I mean,
And how did you then go from embellishing and enlarging the stripped down version into a band version?
actually, the band version we recorded it. It was one of the first Jaye Jayle songs I'd written around the same time as the 7 Inches, and before really having a band. And then we were recording all the songs that would be turned into House Cricks, the album House Cricks.
Yeah.
And we recorded it. And then after recording it, I was like, maybe there just shouldn't be guitar in this song at all for this version. And just because of the way Todd constructed his bass line and the organ synth part, it's like the whole thing. I was like, this is actually something I think is more special than just my same guitar part all over and over again, acoustic version. And then we've been playing that song. We played that song every night on the last tour, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And we only played that song live maybe one time prior to this tour, which was really exciting to bring back such an old song. But the way we were doing it live now is, two guitars and the bass, and it was a really wild, fun experience to be performing that song, and kind of stretched it out a little bit and had some improv moments, kind of guitar noise moments, which was it was one of our favorite songs to perform every night on this past tour.
When we talk about that, it seems, of course, by the title and also by listening to the lyrics, it sometimes seems very. It seems as if you are not appreciating all your skills and talents. Let's put it like that. Is
You
that
mean by
something that
keeping
Yeah, you
it
go
so
ahead.
minimal? By keeping it so minimal?
No, just the whole idea. I mean, like you talk about yourself and basically you call yourself like bloody me, like, oh, I fucked up again, which is, of course, a line that we always say because we are so critical of ourselves. When performing the track now as a band, did it also
Mm.
change your perspective on the track? Not only that it's more fun to play it with a band, but also what the thing means?
The song, the meaning of the song, I wrote it. I mean, this is probably 11, 12 years ago at this point, no longer, but it was Halloween. And it was, always one of those things in Halloween. I don't know if everyone gets this, but it's like, what are you going to dress up as? It's like, what are you going to dress up as? That's always the question. What are you going to dress up as? And I was always just like, I don't fucking know. Bloody me. I don't know. I dress up as
Yeah.
me, and that's kind of where the song started. And then I kind of thought it would be fun to kind of go through and throw in a bunch of characters, like I was kind of some of the lines are referring to Wizard of Oz, which is, I feel like, such a classic Halloween dress up. That's
Yeah.
a thing I think that went from like Halloween seeming kind of like pure darkness, and and then Wizard of Oz came out and all the kids got to dress up like characters in the Wizard of Oz, even though they're still a witch, but they can still dress up as the good witch, and
Yeah.
the lion and the tiger, the Tin Man, and yeah. But the song is just kind of to me, it's just been a fun way to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to dress up as anything for Halloween.
Yeah.
And you can just listen to that song and feel good about it.
Do you know what the stripped down version reminded me of?
What's that?
It reminded me of the piano only version that Trio did of the Misfits Halloween track.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I've really.
It's wonderful. It's just it's Skiba just singing along, and it's only a piano.
Okay.
It's not as scary as before, but it's so gloomy. It's wonderful.
I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even tell you what Alkaline Trio sounds like. So I'll just think it sounds like Danzig.
Nah. There's no guitar in there. It doesn't sound like a guy who is maybe 1 meter and 65 centimeters tall, but weighs like as if he was 200 pounds. Like, no, it's not as bulky as Glenn.
Okay. Okay.
It's much less self-assured. Let's put it like that.
Okay.
Uh, what is interesting, we've already talked about lyrics, and I've been trying to come up with ideas on how to describe it. And at one point, I had a feeling as if Jaye Jayle is basically a mirror for two things: a guy who is punk at heart, but only knows how to express himself in gothic ideas. Would you say there is some little truth to that?
um, I would say that that's not far fetched, but it's I would say that there's always been a thing to dark art and the darker side of life and you know I always try to trace back to my childhood and think about the things that really stuck with me. And it's like seeing Fantasia and seeing the night on Bald Mountain. I'm just like, oh, this devil character comes out of this mountain and there's skeletons around, and I loved it. And the first time I took art classes, the first time I took an art class, and the teacher's like, pick out something from this magazine to draw, and I pull out Jack Nicholson's face from The Shining, looking through the door. And there's like things that I'm just kind of attracted to these things, and they just because someone once said they're evil or they're dark doesn't mean that they actually are. This is all something that someone has programmed us to think this is evil and this is happiness.
Yeah.
These colors are joyful. These colors are not joyful.
Yeah.
A low, dark voice is a scary voice, and a high voice is a happy voice. These are all ideas that have been programmed.
Yeah.
And for me, it has always been a lot of the things that society might say are darker. These things kind of bring me joy. They bring me a lot of happiness, and I like visually and artistically what they're doing. And it has nothing to do with being gothic. It has to do with just what I'm attracted to. I'm attracted to these things and these ideas, and I'm not sitting around casting spells or grave digging or doing things like this. But it's I like the idea of also thinking about death as much as I do thinking about birth. I like the balance. I like keeping things on a nice level plane of being very real about life and not ignoring the things that are all equally important with life and death and existing and just being connected to reality in a way that is not delusional. And I think it helps with not living in fear. It helps.
Let me then ask, because you've said that so nicely and clearly, how do you then feel about a character like, for example, Ronald McDonald?
I think Ronald McDonald is kind of actually terrifying, but it's my funny thing about clowns is my grandmother, my mom's mother, she had a clown collection, and it was not like dolls, but it would be like paintings and ceramics and little characters, and she had this whole shelf system that was full of clowns, and it's quite terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I totally get that.
and I never, like when I was younger, we were just like, oh God, like let's not play near the clowns and let's go to the other room. And when I was older, I got to talk to her, and I was like, I've never asked you, why do you like clowns so much? And she's like, I don't. Someone just gave me a clown ceramic once, and then people saw it and they just started giving me more. And then all of a sudden, I just had a clown collection, and then people are giving me clown paintings. And she's like, and I don't even really like them. It's just people latched onto it and I guess thought it was weird or unique and just started giving me more clowns. And now I have a clown shrine.
Yeah, and the fear of not giving anything back because you might
Exactly.
annoy people. Oh,
She
why are
probably
you
had to.
giving away my present here?
She probably had to react like she liked it every single time.
Yeah,
Be like,
yeah.
"Oh, thank you for another
Wonderful. Thank
clown.
you.
Oh, another clown. Thank you, thank you."
Oh, I dropped it. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Evan, first of all, thanks for the insight into the new record and also into these personal matters. But you know how it works. We always go through the quickfire round at the end. And I also listened back to our initial interview from July 2023. If anybody wants to go back there, you can find it in our archives. So I didn't give you anything twice. I looked up a lot, or I thought about a lot of musical ideas that I would like to throw at you. So the first couple is Codeine versus Sonic Youth.
Sonic Youth. Yeah, Sonic Youth. Discovering Sonic Youth when I was a kid was massive, and listening to Goo and Dirty over and over and over again, and still being a fan. And also, my newest favorite music right now being made is Kim Gordon.
Yeah, that
Kim
new record
Gordon's
is really good. Yeah.
her two solo records. I'm just like this. I'm jealous. They're so good. It's like the hip hop beats and noise and her everything all packaged together. It's incredible.
Two of these Americana bands or alt country bands, however we want to call it, Freakwater versus Wilco.
Well, absolutely Freakwater. As Freakwater took Jaye Jayle on our first actual tour, and it was 7 weeks long, and we rode in the van with them for maybe it was 9 weeks long. It was a very long tour. And also, Freakwater started before Wilco.
Yeah.
And they're the pioneers of my lovely friends are the pioneers of alt country, supposedly, which is I think more people need to listen to Freakwater. Very underrated. And I hate to even say that, but just more people need to listen to Freakwater.
Well, there's no need to hate something that you like.
Well, I hate to say underrated. I don't like.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Of course. I don't know how familiar you are with the Omaha scene of the very early zeros, but I'll give you two bands that were either from around there or that were on Saddle Creek. 2 Gallons versus Cursive.
I don't know much about either of those bands, so I have no direct opinion about either of them.
So then I'll choose for you. And as you said, more people should listen to Freakwater. I'll say more people need to listen to 2 Gallons because their records on Saddle Creek are just amazing. And Steady Rolling is probably my all-time alt country favorite track ever.
Okay, so, I'll check it out.
Yeah. 2 Gallons, like the short story by Joyce. Yeah, Joyce, part of the Dubliners.
Okay.
Two bands that you are very likely familiar with: U.S. Christmas versus Yope, or Job, as I've also already heard it's pronounced.
U.S. Christmas versus Yob. Huh. It's a tough one. I would guess I would say Yob, as I'm not that familiar with U.S. Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and played a show with Yob. Really nice guys. The bass player is incredibly sweet.
And now
Just,
has a new band, a new
and
transcontinental band, if I remember
yeah, and
correctly.
now I was in a band with my good friends and Oathbreaker, Levy,
Yes.
and Win. So
And if
let's go with
anybody
Yob.
wants to know more about that band, Living Gate did an interview with us a few weeks ago, so
Okay,
you'll also find out more about that.
yeah,
Yeah,
listen
cool
to
record. This old school death metal thing that is just they do that really well. Yeah. Towns Van Zandt versus Willie Nelson.
I mean, you can't fuck with Willie Nelson. It's impossible. I
Mm-hmm.
just saw him play 2 years ago for the first time, and I think he was like 90. I forget how old he like. It was his birthday around then, and brought his son on. And his son played with him, and just the whole show was fantastic. He didn't even play too long, which was great. It was like if he like sat there and played for 2.5 hours or 2 hours, he played like a nice like I think it was like hour and 15, and I'm like, this is perfect.
Mm.
And I'm
Yeah,
also
no
mostly
oversaturation, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I'm mostly a fan of the Willie's first record. That's the one I kind of always go to. It's just
Mhm.
kind of more my speed. But I would go Willie over Towns any day.
I also looked up my notes for our first interview and I saw that there is one couple that I didn't ask you, and so I want to throw it at you right now. Marvin Gaye versus Otis Redding.
Otis Redding, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, just the passion in Otis's voice is incomparable.
Mm-hmm.
And also
Yeah, that's
when people sing like Otis, I'm always just like, don't sing like Otis. You
yeah. Don't
can't
try,
sing like.
right?
Don't even
Yeah.
try it.
Going back to the punk rock slash hardcore roots of the Louisville scene, and also of you, I want to throw two couples at you, not from Louisville, but both seminal US hardcore bands in their own way. Cave In versus ISIS.
Wow, that's a tough one because
Yeah, Hydra Head.
well, my first band that was active, the National Acrobat, played some of our first kind of big shows out of town with Cave In and Converge. And then shortly after, played a bunch of shows with ISIS and became kind of had a like strong connection with them. So I'd have to say ISIS also because I feel so nostalgic and excited every time I hear Celestial, that record. And it's kind of sticks with me, and it still kind of holds up to me as like this minimal, kind of like it's like a krautrock, like doom metal krautrock record or something. There's not much that I can compare to. In the same sense, I do love Until Your Heart Stops, and have a lot of great memories for both bands equally. And that band, the National Acrobat, played our last show with Cave In and Louisville. So, but I'm gonna go with ISIS.
Two hardcore bands, one from Sweden, one from Utah, that went above and beyond hardcore at a point. I'll give you Iceburn versus Refused.
You know, neither really had that much of an effect on me.
Yeah. But if you could
Um,
choose to listen to one, which one would you, if you would listen to one, which one would you rather listen to?
at this point, I think Iceburn.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that Refused once. I think it was like 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
And they were fantastic. And I was really impressed by their band and listened to that the record before the big one. I can't remember what it was even called.
Songs to Fan the Flames of Discontent.
Correct. Listen to that one quite a few times, and for some reason, by the time the next one came out, I already had, like, my mind was already in a different place of what I wanted out of music. So. And I can't even tell you the last time I listened to Iceburn, but Iceburn is one of my closest friends' favorite band. He has an Iceburn tattoo, so it sounds fun to listen to Iceburn.
Definitely. Now. Yeah, they also had a new record, or a really rather recent record. I think it was in 2022 that they also did again on Southern Records. Southern
I didn't know
Records.
That. I didn't know that.
It's an EP, 2 tracks, but it still amounts to more than 30 minutes of music.
Okay.
So it's really cool. Asclepios, it's called. The last 2 couples that I have for you are movies. Don't ask me why, but I just want to know what you think about either couple. Django Unchained versus True Grit.
I think I would go Django. Yeah. Django is great. Saw it in the theater opening weekend, and I always like going to the theater when, like, people are, like, just uncontrollably, like, laughing out loud, you know. And it was one of those movies that everyone's just kind of losing their shit over how fucking funny the movie was and outrageous. So it was great.
And the last couple is basically 2 movies from the same franchise. Back to the Future versus Back to the Future Part 3.
So you wouldn't include 2? Just the first one and the second one?
No.
The first one and the third one?
Yeah.
I'd go with the first one. The third one was a little hokey. I mean, it was a Western, but it's fun, but I wouldn't, if I was going to go back and watch any of those movies, I'd probably watch the second one, though, is what I would watch. That was my favorite. But I would pick the first one.
It's interesting that you mentioned the second one. There is one thing that I totally dislike about the second one, and that is the fact that it's basically made as a middle part. It's not made as a singular movie, but the way that it ends, it's like, it doesn't even end.
Open.
It's just like, okay, we need to get another movie before we can close this chapter. That is something that for example, if we talk about Indiana Jones, you know, I would say that, for example, the Temple of Doom, I nearly had it mixed up. The Temple of Doom is, for me, a better middle movie than Back to the Future Part 2 because it's a standalone movie. But
yeah. I mean, I think I mostly liked it because my memory of the hoverboard. It's you know, the hoverboard was so exciting. It was, you know, every kid my age wanted one of those. I still want one.
Exactly. When I watched it with my daughter a few years ago, she was like, "Dad, can I get a hoverboard?" And I was like, "I'm not sure if you understand the concept of future and stuff like that." But nope,
it's not real.
It's not real, honey. Yes, Evan, thanks for your time. Thanks for the cool new record. Everybody, After Altar is out January 31st. On Pelagic Records and Future Heartworks. Go listen to the record. You will find one of the best renditions of Help ever, and you will also find 6 very, very cool, either old or very, very new tracks on the record. Evan, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you on European stages next year with Young Widows. So take care, my friend.
Hopefully. See you soon.
Bye.